so we can open up the doors to the folks who live in the community. But I'd like to go around the room and have you introduce yourself, not so much for us as a committee and a team, but for the folks that may be watching, so that they know. I'm Dave Clifton, co-chair of the Tricentennial Committee here in the town of Easton, and I share that responsibility with Michelle McGee. And Michelle is tied up late at work tonight, but we officially have a quorum, so why don't I start with you, Ed?
Well, I'm Ed Hansen. I've been on ECAT before a lot. I'm really interested in the history of the town. I've written a book about it, and I'm working on some projects now as well. So that's what
And you also served on the 275th and the 50th?
Yeah, 250th. I was the chairman of the Historical Commission at that time, so I was an ex officio member. And then the 275th, I think I was on that. I was actually the marshal for the parade, but I think I was on the committee too. And you don't want me to list all the boards I've been on because over the years it's been a lot.
Okay.
I am Courtney Pupkin, and I'm a member of the Lions Club, and I used to work with Lee Williams, or Avery Lee Williams for those who don't know, on fundraisers, and when he passed, I vowed to join and help this effort that he cared so much about, and that he had given the seed money for, etc. Because my background is in fundraising. For 20 years, I've been a professional fundraiser, and I also admin the Easton MA Moms page, Facebook page, which has 5,400 moms in Easton. So that will be a great way to broadcast things about the Tricentennial Committee.
Excellent.
Terrific, and thank you for being willing to give your time to be on a Tricentennial Committee. Mm-hmm. And Molly, we'll go to you next.
Sure. Molly Matangelo. I'm only lived in Easton for 6 months, and I thought it would be a great way to give back to the community and also meet people within the community. I'm an Air Force veteran, and I've been in the aerospace industry for about 20 years. So I look forward to helping out.
And I'm Jeanette Camara. I'm the newest member. I was born and raised here in Easton. I still work here. My background is banking, so hopefully I can offer some advice or services that you might need. I think my dad was on the 250th.
I can look it up in my the book I got.
I still have the T-shirt, actually.
We'll have to have you model it for a
Yeah.
photo. And do you spell Jeanette with an A?
Yes,
Okay.
and one N.
My first name is actually Jeanette.
Oh.
No A and 2 N's.
Oh,
so
that's
just
funny.
wondering.
Oh.
And you both have an E.
Yeah.
Jeanette is also the treasurer of the Bank of Easton, and she's also the treasurer of Woodland State Park. So she brings with us some things that we need as a committee. And tonight, not that anyone is campaigning to do it, but I would like to be able to tonight appoint some members of our committee that the select board brought together to handle some different responsibilities. And the very first one on the agenda is the position of secretary. Someone to take the minutes of our meetings, someone who's going to post when we meet at the Sharon Town Office Building, and someone who's going to
Let's hope
Old
it's
habits die.
Let's hope it's the Easton time.
Easton. You just said Sharon.
Sharon.
That's all.
did I say Sharon?
That's okay.
Okay, I meant Easton.
Yes.
After 40 years.
Yeah.
I
I
refuse to
said
say
old
it again.
habits die hard.
But here in the town of Easton, we hope that The secretary will post the minutes as well. And there'll be probably a little bit of training, Molly, that will go with that, just to make sure
Yeah.
that you know exactly what your responsibilities are.
Minutes don't have to
Co-chairs
be
have
too
been
detailed.
handling it thus far, and it's important to do it within 24 hours, so we'll make sure that you get whatever you need to do it. And I'm happy that you had mentioned that you had interest in being secretary of our group. So I'm going to entertain a motion from our committee to appoint a secretary to the Tricentennial Committee as we plan and prepare for the celebration in 2025. Would someone like to make a motion? Or is there anyone else on the committee that has interest in this position? So would someone?
I move to make Molly, and with the long last name, the secretary.
Do we have a second?
I'll say.
We have a second
That was
and a
rough.
third. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We officially
Yay.
have Molly as our secretary, and as the weeks go by, we'll be able to pronounce her name
Yes,
with the dignity that it deserves.
exactly.
At this time, we're going to appoint a treasurer. Is there anybody on the committee that has any experience in being a treasurer?
I have a little experience.
Okay.
Thank
Would someone
goodness we
like
have
to
these
make a
new
motion
recruits.
to consider a candidate? Her name is Jeanette Camaro, and she comes with lots of experience that can be very helpful to us.
The minutes.
Camara.
Sorry, we were helping her with the minutes.
It's C-A-M-A, all right? Not like the car.
Yeah.
Do we have a motion?
Oh my gosh.
Hi, Nora.
Another one of our
Sorry for
members
your
has
loss.
arrived. And maybe you could introduce yourself to the camera, if you would.
Sure. Hi, Nora Youssef, Everly Williams' granddaughter. So we've certainly been talking about this for quite some time, so happy to be here.
Wonderful, and welcome. Right now, we're talking about appointing a treasurer for the Tricentennial Committee as we plan and prepare for our 300th anniversary celebration in 2025. Did somebody have their hand up, or were they scratching their hair?
No, it was me. I was going to nominate Jeanette Camara for treasurer.
Do we have a second? We have a second and a third, and that should be enough. Congratulations, Jeanette. You are officially the treasurer of our celebration committee. The next one is a reappointment that we're happy to have someone that has some experience with past committees here in the town of Easton. And he was nominated by the person we thought was appointed at our very first meeting, Dale Carister. And he strongly recommends that Ed, with his experience and all the things he's done here in the town of Easton, to be our vice chair of the Tricentennial Committee. Do we have a motion to appoint Ed?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second. Motion by Courtney, second by Jeanette. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And everybody seems to be in favor, including Ed himself. So, congratulations, Ed, and
Thank you.
both Michelle and myself will be touching base with you.
Oh, cool.
And,
Yeah, now he knows it's safe to appear.
We have a motion to adjourn. Tony Kinningdale.
Well, I would have been here more or less on time. I'm not saying it would have been necessarily on time, but it would have been close. But
Well,
Lincoln
we
Street.
gave you a good introduction while you were climbing the
thank you.
stairs. You strongly recommended Edmund for reappointment
And my last name is
The,
So-
C-A-M-A-R-A.
as the vice chair.
Oh, excellent, and I'm out, right?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you, that was my motion, yes. So it hasn't been some sort of coup while I've been not present, I take it then.
So folks, right now, we have appointed some folks with various responsibilities that's going to be important as we move towards planning and preparing our celebration. Again, I repeat that Jeanette will be our treasurer, Molly will be our secretary, and Ed has agreed to be the vice chair. And one of the things that both Michelle and I are also interested in doing is to find someone that would chair the fundraising committee. Now, I'm willing to participate on the fundraising committee, and we have some residents in the town have already been seeking interest. One of them happens to be Ken Wood. Ken and I, for the 100th anniversary of Boylan State Park, are used to that route of traveling to the banks and to the different merchants in town. So we'd be willing to help you, Courtney, and I'm wondering, with your background in fundraising, which you had mentioned earlier, it would be very appropriate that somebody from our committee, or maybe one or two, that would like to join in on the fun of raising funds to, as we plan and prepare. But I think it takes an early visit, because we need some seed money in terms of what we have to do right off the bat. So would you be willing to do that, Courtney?
Yes.
That's
Right.
not something that that's not something that we have to officially appoint, but if you're willing to chair that committee, all we need to do is to get our group to endorse it, and we'll help you plan and to add people to that committee, because I think that's going to be important. Is there anybody else on our board that has interest in fundraising?
My interest wouldn't be in fundraising, but I certainly would like to help reach out to the various other sort of organizations in town, you know, whether it's Lions and other groups like that.
That would be terrific, Dale, if you could do that.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of fun over the years, not just in this community, but in other communities, approaching people to contribute. I don't see too many people are going to say no to our Tricentennial. It's just a question of how much and what they feel might be appropriate to participate with us. So, Courtney, if you don't mind, we're going to put you down in the minutes. Is the kind of thing that we need is someone to chair it.
Mm-hmm.
And Dale and I, Ken Wood out there in the community would be willing to, all the funds that we raise have to be made out to the town of Easton. They would go to our new treasurer. We are not allowed as a separate committee appointed by the town to have our own account. So any checks that are made out to the town of Easton. Any bills or invoices we have would go to the town, and they would pay those invoices after approved by our board.
Should those checks be identified in a certain way since they're coming in
Yeah, in the
to
memo,
the
yeah.
Tricentennial, just in the memo section, just for Tricentennial Committee or something like that?
Say that again, Dale?
So the checks, I take it, should be identified in some way so that
Oh,
when the
yes.
town receives them, they know.
Town of Easton, and then the slot on the bottom of the check should say Tricentennial. Now, I met with some folks at Town Hall just to clarify that. If we had a Friends of the Tricentennial celebration, that might be handled in a different way, but I think time will tell whether or not we want to get into that area. But it's going to take a lot of money for us to do some plans that we might have, and we're going to be discussing some of those plans this evening. I would like to share with you a document that I've been playing around with.
David, can I interrupt you for a
Sure,
moment
go
with a
ahead.
question? Does the town have any plans to have any kind of a budget item for the this effort?
There is no budget. Some towns have provided budgets, this town has not provided any seed money. So I guess we've agreed that we'll just go out and raise what we need to raise.
Is that something that could be revisited? In other words, if we're
I think it
request
could
by the
be.
committee?
I think it could be. Unfortunately, our select board member is not here this evening, Mark, to kind of guide us on that. But it is something that we could approach. And of course, it depends on our budget. From my experience, I was given $50,000 seed money for another celebration. And I gave the town back at the end of the celebration $65,000. So the town made $15,000 just by us, and they don't normally get it back.
Right.
And usually it's spent on the celebration, but we were able to raise extra money.
Do we know how much seed money there is now?
We have no seed money at all.
Oh, we have leaves money.
Yeah, you have some money.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
you
have-
have some money from previous celebrations?
No, we
No,
have
Lee
Lee Williams donated money.
seed money.
Oh, I'm not aware of that.
It was a
Yeah.
substantial amount.
It's like
Okay.
100,000. Maybe
I don't know if
100.
it was as
Could
high
you
as
look into that,
100.
Ed, for us?
You want me to
Yeah.
look into it?
Oh,
Would you-
or I
No,
can.
you go
We've
ahead.
got enough things to do, honey. Yeah, I'll look into it.
That's perfect. Then Courtney, you're gonna look into that
Yeah.
Courtney, I would say it
possibility.
was
Does that
around
answer your
30,
question, Dale?
but better
Well,
to
that
do
certainly
that.
gets us off and rolling. I still
The-
wouldn't have any problem if we wanted to make a request to the town, put it as a budget item. I presume it would have to be going to town meeting, but it might be too late at this point to go in the
Yeah,
town meeting,
and
right?
just, I agree with you. I think the town needs to shell out at least some money that we can pay them back later,
Right.
if that works.
I
But
wrote-
it would be, yeah, I tend to be long-winded. It's-
No, I
It's a
just.
sign of
I
age.
didn't-
It's a short wind.
So, next year would be the time to ask that in that 2024 budget, because we'd spend it in fiscal '24 into
Yep.
'25. So we still have time, and if we get our budget set up, and we know exactly how much we're gonna need, it'll make it easier to focus that.
And I wrote a note to myself to look into what other towns received on average to present to the town, to say other towns are giving their centennial groups X amount.
You're going to shame them into it, aren't you?
I'm a fundraiser.
Yeah. And as you all know, we can use whatever seed money there is to, leverage and match or all of that.
Oh, yeah, lovely. I love a match.
Before we get into the organizational chart, then Courtney, you're gonna look into the funds that might possibly be available, and you can let us know.
Yes.
That'd be terrific.
Yep.
I, in my spare time, have been kind of playing around with an organizational chart, and I noticed the names are already in there. I kind of guessed what the election results might be. But I think we also need to consider a webmaster. And I think the possibility of David, who's not here right now to defend himself, but Michael is what I meant. I meant Michael Good had mentioned at a previous meeting that he might be interested in something like that. So we're going to wait till we hear from him. I also think there needs to be a photographer, someone that can snap pictures from start to finish as we plan and prepare.
And maybe that's something we can get donated to one of the photographers locally.
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
oh, definitely
Yeah.
donated.
Yes.
Maybe
Volunteer.
something like Eric Lothrop or some of the others who
Yes, Eric just gave to the Lions and did a great job at the Santa event. And Dana Marshall is a good friend of mine. And then her protege, Jessie Jenkinson, if you're listening, she is wonderful, a young up-and-coming photographer, Oliver Ames grad, and so there's lots of potential. Now, what would be but there actually is so much potential. What would we do how would we pick, or how would we narrow that down?
Could be more than one, right? Just
Yeah, there, with as many events, yeah,
Could
that's
be a-
true.
Could be a committee. But
I'd
there
love
could
it.
be a lead photographer who could assemble a committee together to take care of.
Okay, I'd be willing to help facilitate that if need be, unless we have someone who can do that, but I'd be willing to help find, I just seem to know a lot of photographers somehow. I don't know.
I think one of the things that Michael mentioned was Facebook. Was that what he mentioned, Molly, at that meeting? Was
It's
it
been so
Facebook?
long, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Maybe Instagram?
yeah.
I think he was talking about it.
Yeah, Instagram's the picture one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways,
Eric Lothrop, I love
we
that.
can check that out and try to fill that void. Is there anybody else that you think might be important to our committee that should be part of the organizational chart?
I feel like we need like a recruitment person, like a volunteer recruitment, or in it. Well, it's kind of leaning to what Dale was saying. Like, if not a recruitment person, a community liaison, who, because I believe you had said at the first meeting you want to work with every nonprofit organization in Easton.
Correct.
So I see that as a role that is missing then. That sounds like a big,
I think there was
Yeah.
a volunteer chair. Or
yeah,
something
either
like that.
volunteer chair or a community.
Well, kind of like maybe a
Connector.
community liaison chair, and that's sort of what I was volunteering to do, is sort of it's connecting with the various nonprofit organizations in town.
I think a community liaison sounds even better than the volunteer,
Right.
because all these committees are gonna have numerous volunteers that are gonna be, whether it be the parade or the anniversary ball. But somebody that could be a community liaison.
I can help you. I just want.
You've got two volunteers over here,
I just
although you're
wanna
ignoring
learn.
me, I think.
No, and I'll help too. because
Yeah, great.
I know
Yeah.
a lot of the old.
So maybe we could do sort of like a separate committee on that,
Yeah.
because I see a lot of value in really partnering with a lot of other organizations in town, so that you get all that energy with everybody moving forward on this. So maybe the three, Molly and Ed and myself, could lead those efforts.
That would be terrific, co-chairs, and not only that, but I'm thinking of the fundraising committee. Maybe that should be on this chart as well.
Oh, yeah.
And you've already agreed, Courtney, to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And Dale, you two want to co-chair the volunteers? That'd be terrific.
With Ed's able assistance,
Yeah,
of course.
and,
Yes.
and Molly too.
Yeah.
I just
Well, I
want
think
to
she's the co-chair.
learn everyone's name. Like, I don't know anything about this area, so
That's
I'm
good.
really just
Well, you
gonna
can just
be
write down the people. that
snooping
volunteer.
around.
That's good.
Why don't you do this, Dale? Why don't you chair it? She's the secretary. You chair the volunteers.
Sure.
And you can have a committee
Right.
of a bunch of us that could be involved. So I'm going to add a block for volunteers, and I'm going to add a block for fundraising.
Community
Thank you.
liaison.
Yeah. And I can
Community-
help too, like with the
community
moms club, all
liaison.
the,
Oh,
Is
it'd
that
be
what we're
great,
going to
yeah.
call you, Dale? Community
I'm s-
liaison?
yeah.
Yeah, that I like the sound of that.
I proposed instead of webmaster, we make it a marketing chair. 'Cause it's
Oh,
web,
yeah.
it's signage, it's
Mhm.
all of the above.
Terrific
I can
suggestion.
take on updating the website specifically if we need that. If Mike doesn't want to do it, or
Yeah.
and then work with the marketing chair.
Okay, we'll find out between you and Mike who will handle that, but I like the idea of calling it marketing
Mhm.
instead of webmaster. That's terrific. Now, everybody should have a copy of the agenda. And we can add to that as our meetings go on, folks. We don't have to, everything is not in concrete right now, but at least we got a start tonight and we know where we stand. We've made our appointments, we reviewed the organizational chart. We want to spend some time on the logo, how important that is for just about everything we do. And we haven't had a quorum at some of the meetings to really go into detail on the logo. But I made some suggestions at the last meeting of possibilities, and maybe you folks may think of something that you think would make the ideal logo. I think the plan was to put the years on the top, put the town of Easton in there somewhere, have a logo, and on the bottom of our banners, we would have a sponsor. And sponsors would want to jump in and be able to have their banner on one of the light poles. But a lot of people, when they think of the town of Easton, and at least that's my perspective, they think of shovel. I'd like to get some input from you folks.
I did like your idea originally of the clock.
You like the clock?
Yeah, I like because I didn't even notice it had shovel hands.
We haven't made a shovel in this
I
town
know.
in 75 years, so maybe if we're looking into the future, maybe
Yeah.
we need, and the clock might be the way to go, because that's a new symbol of town.
Well, it also ties into your recognizing the time period.
Exactly, yeah.
So-
I like the clock myself. I've been using it in my emails because I was impressed with it, but I'm gonna pass it around so you can kind of look at it.
I always almost talk over people and stop myself. The only thing I'm worried about with that is that actually was taken by Eric Lothrop. It's a wonderful photo, but certainly I imagine he would give us permission. But it also makes me think about when we had to, whatever quiz we had to take, or the ethics file. Does it matter that this was like, that we would be highlighting work by one artist of Easton by using this?
No.
You could
Does that-
digitize it.
Does that,
You could digitize it. It's the copyright issue. Getting his permission to use it would be the way to go.
but there's no conflict of interest that we're promoting this one,
Well, there's a restaurant in the back,
that too?
and it's not the farmer's
There's a
dollar.
But
bigger
it's
version
not
of
the
it.
farmer's, it's not about, it's the person who took the photo.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not about the restaurant or the clock. It's just about, I didn't know if it would be, just because I'm being trying to be super cautious.
there's a lawyer over there. Ask him. He'll charge. But
Oh, good. I didn't
Free
know
of
you
charge,
were a
no
lawyer.
pro bono here, absolutely.
Wonderful.
I think the thing to do would be to reach out to Eric and see if we can just work something out.
But it doesn't look bad for us to be like promoting one.
Well, it's an image,
artist's
it's not necessarily
image.
promoting him. I
Right.
think the idea is you're not putting his name forward per se. I
Oh.
mean, there could certainly be some other separate recognition, but
But I do like it. It's beautiful.
I mean, you get into the issue of it's a clock that's sitting there. You go and take your own damn picture.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
True. But it is a beautiful picture.
right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Just throwing it out there, but I love it myself.
Because for the logo purposes, you probably want something that's not necessarily the photographic image of it, but it's a
Exactly.
representation of that, right?
Yeah.
So you can work in the 300.
Right.
The person who donated the clock, I know, would love it.
I think we know who that is.
It's interesting, I was in a restaurant and I saw Shovel Time Town, and underneath it said brewery. And I thought that we could take that out and put something else in. But I guess we'd have to get permission from whoever these people are as well.
A lion, actually.
Well,
Yeah.
that's Jim McSherry
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Ariel Terry.
But is there anybody else on the table that has any comments about the possibility of a logo?
I really like the clock. I think that for a variety of reasons. It's sort of an iconic image here, and it's representative of the time and everything, so I think for a lot of reasons that would be a great way to go.
It's interesting, I came to the very first meeting with the logo that I thought was terrific.
Mhm.
And Michelle had mentioned that this is kind of like the town of shovels. So I looked into shovels, and we were asking for input from the committee members if there's anything else. I know at the high school they have a tiger.
We also have a shovel. It's a tradition that the graduating senior class passes a shovel back to the junior class.
Okay.
So,
There's an actual shovel.
An actual shovel.
See, and we need
Do
you.
we,
Yeah,
let me just
everything's
ask this
leaving.
question. Do we have enough people on the committee that either feel that the shovel is the direction to go, or is the clock the direction to go?
Well, the clock has shovels.
Yeah, the
Yes.
clock has shovels, so
Yeah.
I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm all in favor of the clock, and I don't hear anybody advocating otherwise, right?
I'm willing to ask Eric unless someone else has more of a relationship with him, but I know the photographer.
Can we say that we all agree with the clock photo until we get approval? We won't make it official. But
You know, I'm a little concerned about the church in the background because it is a thing. But on the other hand, I really love the clock because you're facing east, and that's a sunrise, and sunrise for the next 300 years, the future.
So cute.
So
I thought of changing the time, but that would be too difficult.
I bet he could do it.
But you bring up a good point, Ed, that is someone going to react to a church being in the background? To me, when I look at this, I'm not really looking at the church, I'm looking at the street.
I'm sure
I'm
he
looking
can
at the
Photoshop
town
the
of
church
Easton.
out of it.
I'm sure he could. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I love the picture, and I love the church in the picture. I'm just not sure.
It may be hard to print on like something like a coin.
I mean, something
as
like
well.
this?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then that would leave
That's
you
cute.
room to the side for, putting the name of the town and Tricentennial and all the words that you were saying earlier.
So we would still have to have permission to use the clock?
If we use that shot,
That
yes.
image.
Yeah.
And he could give us the high res.
Yeah.
Does everybody agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think what we're saying is we just want to have the clock and the sunset in the background,
Sunrise.
Sunrise.
sunrise in the background. And that would be our logo.
Yeah.
Sounds good to
And
me.
we have an insightful story
Over in another
behind
community,
it,
they
too.
use the lake
Right.
because that was the big thing there. But I think this is terrific. A lot of progress. We may just go right to 2025 after this meeting. So everybody agrees with this then?
Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
And were you gonna
Could
ask
someone make a motion
Eric?
Yep,
and Molly can put it in the minutes?
I move to approve for use of the logo, the image of the clock without the companion building behind it.
With the approval of
Of the artist.
the
Yeah,
artist.
and I'll follow up with him tonight.
Good enough. And that'll be the first thing on the agenda at the next meeting.
So do we need a second for that motion and then? a vote?
Second.
Well, you
yes.
made the mo- no, she seconded, we're all in favor.
Okay, there we go.
Hallelujah.
Move it along.
Flight attendant arms over there.
All those opposed, please stand. No. Okay, I think it looks like a majority, and that's terrific. That's progress. The next thing on the agenda that I'd like to discuss with our committee is some potential events. At the last meeting that we had, we didn't consider them to be minutes because we didn't have a quorum. What I did was I wrote a report of what we discussed so that we could take advantage of at least meeting. And that's why they weren't posted, because it was just a report of some people getting together. Nothing was officially voted on. We did that tonight. But it was suggested, I think by Mark and Dale, that what we should consider is coming up with some events that we know are gonna happen. We can always add events as we go through with our meetings. But there are some things that we know we're gonna have. Like one thing we had strongly recommended is that we take advantage of some of the activities that are taking place in the town of Easton on a yearly basis, and include those in our celebration. And if you look at the organizational chart, I do mention that ongoing town events. it sounds to me like we are gonna have a parade at some point to celebrate our anniversary. Everybody seems to be in favor of that thus far. Some residents had suggested, as well as some of our members. We also know that, like in any community, we have the anniversary gala ball. We know that's gonna happen, we don't know when. Should we approve it and start thinking about a committee to run the anniversary ball for the Tricentennial Board?
It seems a little early to me. I don't know, I'm just thinking in light of sort of laying out the overall landscape, is it not better to sort of figure out what I look at it as two buckets, one of which is where there are existing events in town and we're partnering with other organizations, so whether it's the holiday festival or something like that, and then second, what are the new events that we would be creating specifically for this event. So I'm more of the mindset that maybe it makes sense to figure out the overall landscape of what we're doing before we go too far down the road in any particular activity, but I'm open to.
Is there someone that has a list of annual events already that I could reach out to?
Yeah, reach out to me, I'll get you.
Okay.
I have a list, and Ed submitted a list of possibilities.
I've got more too, because I've been talking to people, and yeah, we're gonna have a parade, and if we're smart, we're gonna have fireworks, because the police chief, the fire chief, and the town administrator all want a fireworks show. And so do a large chunk of the Lions Club, so that might be a
As a matter of fact, that I was thinking of the parade and the fireworks being on the same day.
yeah, that makes
And of
good
course, the
sense.
fire department would be the agency that would handle it. And to answer your question, Dale, I agree that a lot of the events that we have, we need to plan and prepare and give it a little bit more time. But some of the major events, like the parade, regardless of who runs it, it could be part of something that's already taking place year to year, but it may increase because of the Tricentennial celebration. I see the parade and the fireworks, I see the anniversary ball. I see getting the Historical Society pumped up to find out what they would like to see as part of the history of the town of Easton as we plan and prepare for the 300th. That doesn't mean we may pick out 6 events that we can start thinking about and start trying to find the people who are doing this already. Or maybe there may be people out there interested if we advertise to see. We know there's going to be an anniversary ball. People are kind of expecting it. That doesn't mean we have to do it in the next couple of months. It may be down the road, but at least we know that it's on the schedule to plan and prepare. Go ahead, Ed.
When you first mentioned an anniversary ball, you mentioned the one you ran over in Sharon. And didn't you run that as a fundraiser, as a way to make some money?
Not really. We had people that jumped in and sponsored,
Oh, okay.
and we got the new dealership in the town to provide his site as the place where we had the ball, which he moved all his vehicles out, a brand new facility, and we could handle 1,000 people. So it was absolutely.
So what I was thinking of is, would it not make some sense to have almost like a sponsoring organization for certain of the events? And by sponsor, I don't mean just putting the money forward, but really sort of more of the legwork and doing it, because this committee is not going to have the capacity for sort of organizing and running all of the events. I sort of see us more of an umbrella.
Well, I think that's what Dave is saying.
Yep.
We got a parade and an anniversary ball. Everybody expects that. I'm not thrilled with the idea, but everybody expects that. And then what you do is you go to the outside organizations and say, how can you make one of the things that you do really special for that year?
Yeah, well, by way of example, like on the anniversary ball type of thing. So the Lions have the celebration of Easton, which they've been doing on a general annual basis. The first year was to celebrate Easton Community Service. There was none in 2021. 2022 was to recognize and honor first responders in the town for getting us through COVID. This year we're doing it May 13th at Stonehill, honoring and recognizing local veterans. It would seem to me to make sense to try to partner that a celebration of Easton event tied into the 300th anniversary, whether that's taking the responsibility for the footwork for putting together an anniversary ball or something like that. I mean, there are already things like that going on where organizations like that might be able to substantially help move the ball forward on it. So
That's a good point. I know that what we did was we put together 6 people. They were the anniversary ball committee. They went out and found a place. They found sponsors. And who's the guy that runs the dealership over there in Sharon, the new one?
Is it the Rodman?
No, it wasn't Rodman, and it wasn't Ernie Bach. Who's the other big one?
Herb Chambers.
Herb Chambers. He gave us his facility plus $10,000. There may be some major sponsors out there that may be willing to do that kind of thing, but Stonehill College might be the site.
Well, Stonehill, we just had a meeting last night planning the celebration of Easton for this year, the event honoring and recognizing veterans. And Stonehill is basically donating the use of the facility. We're just paying for the catering and for the any extra police that has to be done. But it's a beautiful place, over at the Pettit Center. It's more limited capacity. You might need something larger than that. But I know Stonehill likes the idea of partnering with the community, and that would be another perfect example of getting them to help out. But already with the Lions, so we had a group of 15 people yesterday meeting, planning the celebration event with speakers, with the catering and everything else. So you've got organizations, and We Do Care did something recently, I think.
YMCA, Chamber.
Yeah, so you've got organizations like that are pretty well suited to help move it along. I think we would just want to make sure that we've got a roadmap of what it's going to look like, and folks are pointed in the right direction.
That makes sense, Dale, and I know that it wasn't my intention to recommend that we run everything. As a matter of fact, we would have groups that would be running each event, and they would report back to this board. And there would be representatives from each celebration committee that would come to our meeting and give us an update on their progress and what are their needs. But I would think that Stonehill College and even Borderland State Park would be another site. I know that we've had some interest from Borderland to do the Tricentennial car show. Dale was interested in chairing that. He's been doing a car show at the park.
You?
Did you say
Different
Dale?
Dale.
Different deal.
Oh, okay.
I just put your name down.
Yeah, no, I'm driving an old Toyota Camry from 2008. I'm not the guy for you.
But Dale Thistle
Let me write.
is interested in trying to get 300 cars to come to Borderland State Park as part of a tricentennial.
That'd be great.
That's cute.
And split the funds with the Tricentennial Committee. So he knows he's going to get a good turnout because they've had car shows over there before, and I know Jeanette is familiar with the park. But it's got a different twist to it because it's Tricentennial and the park is in Easton. It really makes sense to consider. What will we have to do as a committee? Provide the support, make it part of the Tricentennial celebration calendar. He would come to the meeting on behalf of his committee and present to us how many cars have signed up and all that kind of stuff. So we wouldn't have to do anything except go to the celebration and give them support to make it part of the, that was another event, but are there any suggestions that committee members have of some activity? Go ahead, Ed.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I've thought about this for a long time. And there's a celebration and rah-rah, congratulations. But I see a problem in the town. I see over the 50 years that I've been involved, sort of an erosion of community. And I look upon this as an opportunity to do a little community building. And having a parade's a nice way to do that, but after you clean up after the elephants, it's over. So I want to see some stuff that's lasting. And the town itself is doing a couple of projects that we're aiming specifically to have completed in 2025. We're trying to put in a park down in Furnace Village to honor first responders. And we're trying to have some other projects like the new playground area up at the campus for the school done in 2025. And there's a couple of other projects that we're aiming for 2025 as gifts to the town. Here we go. This is your work, our CPA work, and that's that. But Molly wants to get to know people. And I think we need to do events that do that. One of the things I've done is I've approached Fernandes. Fernandes annually does a barbecue. And I said to the guys down there, would you be willing to take your barbecue off-site one year and roll it up into an event where people get to celebrate their community, their ethnic heritage by doing different kinds of food? And they were interested in that. They thought that was a good idea, and maybe we get some.
I'm from Louisiana, so
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Still occasion gumbo going on there. Okay.
So I'd like to see that. I spoke to one of the leading librarians over at Stonehill, and so, yeah, Stonehill's great with providing us with space, and they run a number of programs during the course of the year which are open to Easton residents, except nobody knows about them. So she's interested in approaching Stonehill about doing a series of programs during 2025 and inviting people in, making it a much more publicized event.
She's interested in doing so as part of the Tricentennial, you think?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking about it at lunch the other day. She bought too. It was good.
Okay, even better. There you go.
So would there be opportunities for some of those, the park and the gifts to the town, for people to volunteer to help build that?
Oh, yeah. We're looking for people to help build the Swiss Park Memorial down in Furnace Village. Another thing that was very successful, it wasn't related to one of our 50 or 275th, but it was related to the 50th anniversary of the park. And they put on an old-time baseball game. And that might be fun, to have an old-time baseball game at the park. And I think they would be open to that. That would give them a chance to highlight some of the new things that they have down there.
We used to do that at Borderland.
Oh, you did 19th century baseball. I played at a couple of those games. Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
Providence Jays or something?
Grays.
Grays,
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, they're one of the leading
Yeah.
19th century teams. This was the one in 1980 was a bunch of the guys that played for the Huskies in the 40s and 50s. And there are people that played for the Huskies in the 70s and 80s. We could cajole, but I'd love to see a 19th century baseball game. There's nothing like that. But I want to bring in new people, and because as we were talking about earlier, yeah, we haven't made shovels in a long time. We're still shovel town. They're still on the high school rings, and I've certainly done a lot to promote the Ameses and the shovels and all that stuff. But we need to build for the future. Let's use our Tricentennial to do some of that, or have somebody do it for us, actually.
I think it's a great idea. What about also doing something on a neighborhood basis? Because that way you'll get folks together, and especially if you're recognizing sort of historical neighborhood, not only necessarily formal historical, but certain neighborhoods that have been known for a long period of time.
Well, it might be fun to do like a historical neighborhood walk, have people, you know, small groups, whatever's feasible, to learn about the neighborhood that they live in.
Yeah.
Well, I
think
have
that's a good idea.
neighborhood block parties. where
I think that's a great
neighborhoods
idea.
Get to know each other.
Yep.
And they get roped off, and the police are aware of what they're doing. And I also thought of promoting diversity in the town of Easton by maybe coming together at the high school and using the auditorium for different diversified kinds of entertainment. And then use the gymnasium to have buffets with all different kinds of
That's
food that
perfect.
represents
Yep.
diversity in the town of Easton.
And there's an outside area that links to the cafeteria, so that, you know, if we did it in the summertime, you could have barbecue cooks outside, as well as using the kitchen in the inside. So that's a perfect location.
It would be kind of a terrific thing to be able to pull off. I love the neighborhood concept of, believe it or not, neighbors get to know who their neighbors are, and they live beside them for years.
That's
And I think
wonderful.
Yeah, I think you'd find people would be really motivated to do that, you know, and I agree with you. I think we're sorely in need of a little of that community spirit out here. You know, it's too much of folks sitting in the basement, you know, complaining about things on
What, you
Facebook.
know, what happened 50 years ago, we had some really strong organizations in the town. The Historical Society was going strong. The Lions Club was really rolling, not that it's not now. You guys are certainly doing a lot. Sheep pasture was a big force in the town. But as demographics have changed, as people's lifestyles have changed, those organizations have sort of fallen into the background a little bit. And if we could do something to revitalize them, that would be great too. And your idea of challenging the Historical Society to do something is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, that's something that usually happens in these kinds of celebrations, especially if we're talking about the history of the community. Should we invite someone from the Historical Society to attend our meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Make them aware of our celebration and ask them for some suggestions?
The two names that I would give you, they have a, well, I'll give you three names. The president of the Historical Society is Ken Michael. He lives up the street. And down the street is Jonathan Coe, who has revitalized the collections at the Historical Society. And then the two-for-one shot is Tim Hurley, who's, like me, seems to be on every board in town. He's the on the Historical Society's Board of Directors. He's the chairman of the Historical Commission, and he's on the board at the Hall. So that's a three-for there.
I did speak to Ken when we were just starting, so Ken is aware. And he actually said something like, I think I should probably be on that committee. So he's ready for the ask. If you have the I sent him an email and he did not reply, so I don't think I'm the person to reach out to him.
I don't think I'm
Ken, if you're listening.
But
Dale?
I'd be happy to contact him.
Okay.
I don't know him, but I'll get to meet him and invite him to a meeting and give him ample opportunity to think about, with his committee, some of the possible things that he'd like to see happen as part of a Tricentennial.
I have his email address.
You could
so
send
I
that
can
to
send
me,
it to you.
coordinate.
But he didn't reply to me, but hopefully he'll reply to you. Okay.
I wanted to maybe add another idea, kind of along the same lines of food, the food like fair, but like an artisan fair, because there's a lot of people that do
Yeah, that
crafts
would be
and-
super.
Well, that's kind of like the harvest fair.
Yeah. There's the harvest fair at the end of the year that's done by the NRT, and that has an artistic component. Carolyn Cole used to do a all art thing at 50 Oliver Street, and I was just told yesterday, I don't know why who, it was yesterday, so I don't remember, that the Legacy Festival is coming back this year, and that's held at the Governor Ames Estate. And the idea behind the Legacy Festival was to have a kick off the summer kind of event.
Yeah, they recently obtained approval from planning and zoning, I believe, to put like sort of a temporary tent structure out there, and I think to expand certain parking for that purpose of doing that type of an event there.
Okay, who got that?
So it was the trustees of the reservation?
Yeah, the trustees have a big plan for their pavilion or tent.
Yeah, they presented in front of the planning and zoning board within the last month and a half or
Everybody's
so.
waiting to hear where the parking spaces are gonna be.
Well, they were expanding a few, but that's, I mean, they couldn't expand much, but they were getting approval to expand the parking as much as they could, kind of, if you're facing to the left.
You know, another old tradition of the town is the Ames clam bake. And every Labor Day weekend, Mrs. Ames would run a huge clam bake at the Governor Ames estate. And that might be something that we'd want to try as part of the celebration as well, make it open to everybody instead of.
Yeah, I really like the idea of kind of looking back in history and so maybe sort of reinvent or something that we had done before. So something like that would be great, I think, because then it has a little more historical meaning.
The PDF books, the yearbooks or whatever, program books from the 2 prior centennials should have some good information for us to see, what has been done.
Yeah, I've got one from the 275th at home. Did you?
The 250, I printed that off,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
it's page 28, 29, if anyone's curious looking through it. So it's really interesting, and they parlayed a lot of what was already going on in town and just labeled it as calendar of events for the year. So as we're saying, ongoing town events, we can, add the spin of 300th anniversary. And then I noticed also, so for example, they had the June 29th was the parade day of Easton's 250th anniversary, 3-hour parade consisting of floats, bands, and marching units, followed by a mini field day sponsored by the Easton JCs. And a lot of these events were always sponsored by the Rotary Club of Easton. So again, we don't need to duplicate efforts, we can just, it's already going on.
Yeah.
Nice.
Terrific.
Yeah, exactly. Those books will be huge for us
Yeah,
to
let's
use
get
as
it
a
up.
launch pad.
Yeah, maybe that's something we can also do as part of the community liaison part, of sort of reaching out to these, identify what we think to be the events going on and so
Yeah.
forth, and then reach out to these organizations and see where we can partner with some of those organizations to help in that regard. It's separate and apart from building the new events that we do.
The next item that I'd like to talk about on the agenda, of course, is fundraising. And I think Courtney has agreed to chair our fundraising committee. And I know Michelle and I were talking about the possibility of visiting the banks to kind of kick it off.
I don't recommend doing it this week.
Yeah, you got a point there.
The local ones are fine.
I've been in and out of the banks and been talking to different people. And I think that at some point, and I know Jeanette is a treasurer of the Bank of Easton, I think they're interested in doing something. It's just a question of what is feasible. But I think the fundraising committee can either do a Zoom call or somehow we could kind of chat as to what our plan would be and do what we can. Obviously, Bank of Easton was my first stop, and Jeanette was off that day.
Yeah.
So I'll get a chance to meet with her and just to get something up front, and then we're going to hear about monies that might be available, which would really give us a nice little kickoff as we move forward.
I think it's also important, perhaps before going to the bank, is with the fundraising committee to kind of come up with some sort of a structure of levels, so that we have somewhere to start the conversation. Because I'm not sure what we need yet. I know we need a lot of money, but some things, for example, like the fireworks,
Yeah.
perhaps we can get sponsored, things like that. But we need to develop a goal, a fundraising goal, so we can, break it down. I feel like it's great though to start a conversation with the bank, but I think they'd probably, at least in my experience, they usually want to know what the levels are.
Yeah, I would think so, and I think Jeanette can answer that, but that was one of my reasons for trying to come up with some 5 or 6 events that we know that we're gonna have, that we can say to the bank, this is in our plans, this is what our logo is gonna be, and we're gonna have street banners, which we haven't really get into a lot of detail about. Is there any suggestion or recommendation you might make as a treasurer of a bank? What we should or shouldn't have?
Well, I think like what Courtney said, if you have some kind of a definitive, if we can go in and say, we've got these events lined up, we've got these events that are gonna be sponsored by local organizations, I think it's helpful. It's not so much, at the beginning stages where here's what we wanna do, we're not sure if we can accomplish all of it. I think that's probably a little bit better.
Do we have a sense, and I guess I had asked this of Dave and Ed, haven't gone through this type of exercise before, but ballpark, what are we looking at in terms of what we think a fundraising goal might be?
Well, I think Dave is somebody who's paid for something more recent than 15 years ago.
I was planning just to respond to your question, and I was hoping that the fundraising committee can meet and talk about what we think the goal should be. For instance, we have to decide, what does the bank get if they make a donation? And in previous celebrations, we had provided them with a banner with their name on it that would be on one of the street poles. That would be a given if they're a major donor. And then we would put together a schedule that would list all the activities that we plan and prepare, but that'll come at a later date. I have it here somewhere, but what I've done right now is I passed out a sheet that I'd like to have you look at and think about for the next meeting. If we were to have tricentennial banners, notice on the top of the sheet it says centennial. It should say tricentennial. A banner would have our logo on it, have the sponsor's name on it. Would have to make up some criteria that would decide what we charge for the banners. We have to decide what we're gonna have to pay to have the banners made up. I know who I've gone to in the past, Michelle, and I agree with her. We should try to do this on the local level. If we're gonna have banners printed up, and they would do the finished product, which would have the sponsor's name on it. We did 97 banners in the town I was in, but you have to have the poles. I looked at downtown Easton, and they have 22 light fixtures that you could put banners on.
Okay.
But, go ahead.
So, one of the things you need to be aware of, Mr. Person from Sharon, and you've only been here for 10 years, is we have neighborhoods, and Northeastern is one neighborhood, and if they get 27 banners, everybody else in town's gonna be pissed off like crazy. Just letting you know.
Good point.
I'll be leading the charge on behalf of Southeastern. We're sensitive down there, so.
Yeah.
Dave, if you don't mind me, just so I have a ballpark sense, what was the approximate budget for Sharon? So, is 300,000? I mean, I really have no idea what we're looking at.
We spent 250.
250.
We gave the town back
65.
50 of that.
And what did you get for $250,000? The banners, and
We
those
had a-
seem to have been fairly expensive.
It was all the activities.
When you say all the activities, did you sponsor activities that were headed up by other organizations in town?
most of the activities were handled by other groups.
Okay, so what did you pay for?
We paid for police officers, we paid for banners. I can give you the whole list on the budget.
Good.
But there's a lot of things that come up during the course of the year. Even if you're renting a school, you have to pay custodial fees.
Yeah.
Um,
But I mean, were the big events, the parade and the anniversary ball, was that 75% of that 250,000?
We had to contribute towards it,
Okay.
but we raised most of the money for the anniversary ball. We had to pay for bands in a parade. You know what 10 bands might cost?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Pretty expensive.
Do you know how much was raised?
We raised about 250,000, and it was all donations.
So, getting back to setting levels of sponsorship, you have to set a level that's high enough to be worthwhile for your top one, but not so high that the bank locks its doors.
Yeah, Jeanette's gonna get word back out to.
Our level,
Get the key.
our level, Ed, to answer your question, was 5,000 for a major sponsor.
Yeah, we're gonna need more than that.
Yeah, I would argue for
Yeah,
more than
we're
that.
going
The
on.
major sponsors didn't have to pay it all in 1 year. They would give us 2,500 in 2024 and 2,500 in 2025.
That's a smart idea. That's a real smart idea.
And it was smart because it was recommended by the banks.
Wow.
That's the easiest way we could do it.
And
But-
that actually helps the banks because, you know, if they can pay for our stuff over 2 years, then they can help some of the other organizations that might need seed money as well.
So I would suggest in terms of the levels, what you're looking at is, you know, you're gonna have your major sponsors who are sort of sponsors for the overall and throughout the year, right? So this is something we've been trying to do for like the celebration of Easton and solicitation for the Lions, generally set the levels and so forth. And then you might have some other tiered sponsorships with respect to specific events. You know, so you probably only have a few of the ones we would do the major, so we could do 25,000 or something like that, I don't know. But
Yeah, 25,000 seems like a fair price for the, I don't know, there must be a fancy name for the
Benefactors.
yeah, the lead sponsor or
Mhm.
something like that. And we should have two because we have two banks of our own in town besides all the other banks that have crept in that need to be asked.
And it need not necessarily be a bank. I mean, you could have some of the folks who are doing some of the development work in town who might be, you know, that might deem it worthwhile to get their name out there.
Yeah.
Who's your printer that you use, by the way? I wanted to get, who's your local printer that you said you like to use?
Adam Walpole.
Adam Walpole?
Out of Walpole.
Oh, when you said local, I thought you meant
Yeah.
Easton.
No.
Okay, I have someone, an Easton.
And Michelle mentioned that there may be somebody locally that could do that.
There's
Yeah.
two sign companies, one
Yeah, we
right
have-
next to
Yeah.
your place and
There you
then
go.
one
And-
just on the street from your place.
And
To answer
Ed
your question,
Macy's.
Ed, what did
Lives in
250,000
Easton,
pay for? This is a
Oh, sweet,
schedule
okay.
of
Oh,
all the activities that we eventually will make
let's
up.
scan that.
Yeah, could you
as we
get
go down the
that
road.
scanned and sent around to
Or
everybody?
do you want me to scan it for you?
I have copies for everybody.
Oh,
Oh, sweet, okay.
nice.
I got a briefcase full of
Okay,
stuff that I'd
good.
like to get rid of.
That's helpful.
Could I just jump back to a smaller problem for a
Yeah,
second?
sure.
I love the idea of banners, and I love the idea of neighborhood celebrations. And I'm wondering, we have 10 neighborhoods in town-ish, and if we could have banners printed with a historic picture on the side of a specific neighborhood. And then the week you put the banners up in that neighborhood with those pictures, you have an event. And then you say, okay, later on, we're gonna have a neighborhood party, et cetera, and really make it a neighborhood kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think people would really go for it. You know, we, as part of the issues on the sewer project for the Five Corners area, we created the Furnace Village Neighborhood Collaborative Group, and it was not just residents but also businesses. We got 175 members, so we literally went around. We had 20 neighbors who met, got the thing started, went around with flyers, got email addresses. I'm still maintaining the email group, but it was interesting to me, a number of the folks, and this included a lot of the residents in Gaslight and Lamplighter, and also I think it's Greenwood as well, and the one over by across from Shaw's. Yep, and you remember this. And but I recall that a number of folks kind of commenting on how, by virtue of coming together to work where we're all in the same boat, working with the town collaboratively on the sewer and trying to bring the cost down, that when the trustees of the condos went in and met with the town officials to go over particular allocations, that they felt like they were part of the town. So, you know, I think people will be very responsive to this kind of thing. I mean, we've certainly seen it in the Furnace Village area, you know, and I think if you do everything in the district, people take a lot of pride, you know, where in their neighborhoods where they live. And so what we probably would need to do is to kind of reach out to try to get some organizers for each of those other neighborhoods, right?
It's interesting, as I wanted to say to Ed, that this is not a celebration for Foxborough, Sharon, Rentham. It's a celebration for Easton. And it depends on what the needs are and what people would like to see to bring their communities together. And I think that your ideas and your suggestions are ideas that you might have from other towns. Now, our celebration may not cost $250. It may be $150, who knows? Depends on our fundraising efforts. It depends on the activities we have. You may not be interested in a giant parade that has 10 bands that are very expensive. It might be a different twist to it. But we'll, as we have our meetings, we'll plan and prepare, and we'll get ideas, not just from our board here, but we might seek out ideas from the residents in the town.
Yeah, and toward that end, I think a couple ways of doing that. One would be through the community liaison efforts, reaching out to the nonprofits. The second would be, you know, whoever is going to be heading up sort of the social media component, website, and so forth. Is we need to have a way to solicit input from anybody and everybody, so folks will feel involved. So the Facebook postings and things like that. So when we have more of a digital presence, it would be really nice to put some of those teasers out there and get ideas from folks.
Yeah.
And it will probably likely also get additional folks who would like to help as well.
We need a Facebook page. I know Michelle
Yep.
set up a website, or at least, sorry, not set up a website. She reserved a link address, but it would be great to have a Facebook page, especially when we want to recruit, like for the subcommittees, like for this fundraising. It would be just to be able to share it, and then as we're searching for committee members, it also just spreads the word, and people can say, oh, what is this? And they can go to the page. It's a very, Easton seems to be very Facebook oriented. Like, people respond to Facebook events, as far as, at least in my experience. So I just think that's important.
Well, I think it's nice that ECAT is covering our meetings so that people out there that may be watching may have some interest. I know that I see not just 10 people running this Tricentennial. I see eventually we have people in these seats around the room that come to our meetings. They may be on committees that report to us, or they may be people interested in coming to our meeting, listening to what we have to say, and wanting to participate in some of the things that we'll be covering.
Dave, toward that end, if folks are watching now and interested, how would they reach out to join the effort? Is there an email address that they could use, or?
You certainly can use my email address, diclifton@comcast.net. That's diclifton@comcast.net. If you leave out the I, my middle initial, I won't get it. But again, that's diclifton@comcast.net. Or you can communicate with Michelle McGee, and we'd be happy to listen to what you have to say and try to get you involved in this Tricentennial celebration. is there anything that we didn't bring up tonight that you folks would like to, go ahead, Ed.
Oh, there goes the hand again.
I'm just.
Well, that's his last name, so.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Just one more thing, which we haven't mentioned, but back in 1975, the president of the Historical Society was a man named Kenny Jackson, and he was very big in his church, and decided to get all the churches in Easton together. It was the ecumenical period, and you know, we haven't mentioned getting the churches involved in
And temples.
and the
Yeah.
religious organizations. In 1975, they capped off their participation by putting a stone on the rockery that says, "To God be the glory," which is, you know, everybody always asks, how the hell did that get there? And that's how they put it there.
Yeah, and that might be also part of the community liaison efforts, right? To sort of
Yeah, I
reaching out
mean,
to those
they
type
all
of
have their
organizations.
special
and-
events too, and they're all spread out all over the community, so
Yeah,
that's.
and
a
the
good-
nice thing is that, you know, those folks are probably fairly well organized as well. So you get a lot of energy.
volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to get community-minded folks who are
Yeah.
will be willing to help.
I have another sheet, folks, I'd like to pass around. It's a list of, I call it advisory committee members or a support group. Folks that I think should be involved one way or another in the
Oh, look, it's the
celebration.
church groups on the bottom.
There you go, he's one step
It's
ahead.
not all of the ones that Ed gave us, but I picked out some that I thought would be appropriate for us to think about. Obviously, we're not gonna have a fireworks celebration without involving the fire department and public safety. I also have another sheet I'd like to pass out that has a list of potential committees that we ought to be thinking about. I'll pass this out.
Is there in fact an Easton Men's Club?
I know, I saw that.
Is there an Easton Men's Club?
I heard there was.
Really? I haven't been invited, so.
Yeah, neither have I.
Alrighty then.
Well, I know that there's a very active Lions Club
Yes.
in the town of Easton,
Yes, there is.
and they've done miracles. But
Is that co-op?
one of the things that both Michelle and I were thinking about is committees that we should have. I know we mentioned a couple tonight, whether it be fundraising, what have you. I'd like to have you just look at this, take these home with you, and give some thought to the ones that you think would be important for us to add or subtract. This community for a number of years had a Rotary Club, but it's just Lions these days, which is very active.
So would you want to
I think
include the community liaison committee as part of this? I'm not sure if it's here, if it can.
No, we just brought that up tonight.
Yeah, so we can add that one as
Yeah,
well then?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
You said you had a handout of
The events.
The events from Sharon.
Yes, I was
Um,
looking for that too.
I took a picture of it, I can send it also in the meeting minutes.
He's got copies.
Deal.
I don't mean to give you all this paper, but
No, this is great.
It'd be good to share for everybody
I
not here.
think you missed
this
it.
is something that we may be thinking
Yeah,
about at
good
the
idea.
When I
end.
was introducing myself.
That's
I am one of the
kind of
admins for the
report
Easton
on the
Moms
celebration.
Facebook page with 5,400 women.
I'll just
So that
scan
meeting
it
is
actually.
actually a place for community liaison building, and
And
then
the men are unorganized, so we're in trouble.
they keep the men organized. But then also the Easton Moms Club, it's not on that, but like maybe under youth groups. The Easton Moms Club is a
Yeah,
big,
exactly.
powerful group in town and needs to be on that, or at least under that umbrella. And the last thing is, I'm Jewish, so I know all the people at Temple High Shalom when you need to reach them.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, that, I know we have a number of folks in the Lions Club as well. I think are fairly active in the temple as well. I think, maybe?
I think what I'm gonna do is,
Think of
because I
who's-
get so much stuff here,
No,
I'm gonna
who's supposed to
email
do this.
everybody a copy of that list and a few others that I think you might wanna look at.
Molly scan the one that you passed around, so she can send that out.
Okay.
Yeah, I can just
Go to
let me try to get a better picture actually.
Mark
See if I can
Benacor.
get a better picture. I'll get a better one.
I'm not sure if he's.
Or if you don't mind parting with this, I'll scan it at home and send it.
Okay, why don't you do that?
I'll bring it back.
One group that you left off of the Centennial Celebration Support Group would be the Natural Resources Trust. So we need to put them on there, particularly if we can get them to make the 2025 Harvest Fair the 300th anniversary Harvest Fair.
There's also the Cultural Council too, as well.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, the Cultural Council,
And
they have money.
yeah, they get grants,
Yep.
and I think Dottie's on that, and Mark
Yeah, and Mark,
Benacor's on
yeah.
that as well.
Ed, that was
YMCA.
Cultural Council, what was the other
Yeah.
one?
Natural Resources Trust.
And Ken Wood was on part of the Harvest
Molly,
Fair.
if you're adding to it, YMCA.
When it gets
Lions,
started.
Yeah, and
Oh,
the,
Lions wasn't on.
Eastern Moms Club.
Yeah, I've got the Moms, Natural Resources, Cultural Council, YMCA, Lions.
Ken was interested in helping with the fundraising committee, Ken.
which
Wood.
is great, because I've already done a fundraiser with him.
Yeah, okay. Before we, unless there's anything else anyone wants to bring up, I'm gonna go around the room and stop at each committee members to see if there's anything that we missed that should be on the next agenda. Or is there something you'd like to suggest and you get a chance to mention it? Why don't we start over here?
I think the Facebook group page is key, so I'd recommend start that, and yeah, as soon as the next meeting to have that something up.
Would you be interested in doing Facebook?
I always have compliance in the back of my mind, but I can create it if I come across some compliance issue with social media. I'll turn to Courtney on that one.
Okay. Ed?
I've said too much already, so I'll just,
Oh, come on, raise your hand.
but maybe you, if you have it in front of you, you could introduce to the television audience the other members of the committee.
Yes.
Because we don't want to let those people think they're getting away scot-free.
We know where they are. We
Yeah.
Hunt them down.
They may be watching. Well, Nora Youssef is also a member of our group.
Right
Right
here.
here.
I'm here.
I mean-
I made it.
You need to speak up more at the meetings, I think, Laura.
Michelle McGee and myself are co-chairs. Dale Carister is an active member of our group. Mark Lamb is the select board liaison. Courtney Pupkin is here with us this evening. Michael Good is a member of our committee. He's been at a couple of different meetings. We welcome Edmund Hans, and his past experience and his participation this evening has been terrific. Molly Amatangelo is our new secretary, and Jeanette Camara is our treasurer and the newest member appointed by the select board just last week. We are opening up our swinging door to anybody out there in the community that would like to be part of this tricentennial celebration. We got a long ways to go, a lot of planning to do, and although it doesn't take place till 2025, time goes by very fast. And we were thinking of canceling our meeting this evening because of the weather predictions, but I'm glad we had it. We got 7 of us here, and we got a lot accomplished this evening. Ed, did I give you a chance to,
Yep, I'm all set.
I'm good, thank you very much.
check Courtney, Dale?
I am as well. I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've done. This
Yes.
is awesome.
Thanks for kicking it off.
This book is fantastic. We need to do one of those for sure.
I'm good.
We not only did the book, but we did a sculpture
Historic Society.
in the community to represent the 250th anniversary celebration. Molly, thank you for accepting the role as our secretary.
No problem. I don't have anything.
Anything you'd like to say?
I'm gonna back it up here.
Okay,
One thing I do want to offer to do, if you'd like, is get some prices for the banner, since that was a conversation that came up. Because we know, Ed Basie, he lives in Easton, but his business is in Stoughton. Now in the chamber, that's okay, as long as you're an Easton resident. Do we want to find someone who prints in Easton too? Like Nora said, she has a business.
Yeah, IDS is right around the corner from her, and Signs by Tomorrow are
Yeah,
right
so I'll
around the
get
other corner
quotes
her.
from,
So you're surrounded.
yeah. So would you like me to get quotes just to see, what we're looking at?
that would be terrific if you'd do that.
Okay.
We, at some point in time, will decide if we're gonna go in that direction or do something else. I think someone brought up a good suggestion about neighborhoods. When we put banners up, we did it on the main street, and we did it at all the schools. We did it at Town Hall. We wanted to make sure that people saw the banners and knew that we were having a major celebration.
An event at Town Hall. We've got all that green space in front.
No, you're right. Yep,
Is it
be a nice
still
place
under
to do it.
renovation?
Yeah, it won't be in 2025.
I hope. Did you say hope not to?
Yes.
We just voted money.
And Jeanette, I know this is your first meeting. Anything you'd like to suggest or say?
No, I think
Yeah.
I'm still absorbing.
We appreciate you assuming the responsibility as treasurer. I'd like to, after we adjourn, meet with the treasurer and the secretary just to go over some things that they need to know as far as town hall. And Ed, I thank you for accepting the role as vice chair.
Thanks.
We look forward to your
I
input.
owe you one.
Upon the application of the property.
You're not going anywhere.
And so we look for a motion to adjourn, and a big thank you to ECAT, Eastern Community Access Television,
Absolutely,
for
thank you.
covering this important meeting.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all those that are staying with me? Okay. Hey, and thank you folks for coming out with this weather.